Hi guys, welcome back to Steep Riders. Today we are reviewing a 2009 Yamaha MT03 and we're with James from Tizwaz Riding School in Bournemouth, and I'm going to pass it over to him to tell you more about it.
Cool, so yeah, I'm James, this is my MT03. Yamaha made this bike a while ago, 2006 through to 2014 was the model run, and they made it so that they could have something for the new A2 licenses that came in. Now what they did differently to most A2 bikes is most A2 bikes people get a bigger bike and then restrict it down, and this really was one of the first bikes that was built to be, you know, an A2 legal bike from the ground up. So what they did, they took the engine out of the old XT660, which is like a big off-roader, because at 47 horsepower that's powerful enough to get under the A2 requirements, and then they just built the rest of the bike around that. I've only ever seen one of these on the road, other than my one, so they're fairly rare. I'd say they didn't really sell too well, because, you know, if you go comparing a big lumpy single cylinder against something a bit smoother, you know, restricted 4-cylinder or 2-cylinder motor, obviously that's what people tended to prefer. This used to be our A2 bike at Tizwaz, so if any of my former learners are watching, you may have ridden it or seen it at work. And personally, I absolutely love it. That's why I bought it off the company when it retired. What I like about it, it is a single cylinder, so it's very vibey, but it tends to deliver all the power sort of quite low down. So in traffic, you know, commuting, hacking around cars and stuff, absolutely perfect for that. You've got quite a low seat height, 805mm, and quite wide handlebars, so it's got quite a supermoto-y sort of riding position just from the width of the bars, and as a result, you know, it does feel really quite sort of aggressively set up, and with all that power low down, all that torque, it really is an absolute hoot to ride. Things I don't like about it, it tends to vibrate a lot and it's not that uncomfortable over long distances, but you know, this isn't really why I bought this bike. I bought it for fun and hacking around town. Now, technical stuff, the whole bike is pretty much standard at the moment. All it's got so far, it's got a Bagster tank protector on it. We do this on all our school bikes, that way when they get dropped, it's just something to give the paint a little bit of protection. And then I put a cargo net over the top because I thought it looks quite cool. I've put on bark busters and somewhere for my GoPro and my phone, and that's literally it so far. And I'm not really planning on doing too much else to it, you know, because I quite like how it is as standard. Something that I think a lot of people don't really notice about this bike is under the seat there's a plate that says Yamaha Motor Italia. So I think Yamaha must have had a factory out there for a while that made bikes. I couldn't find anything about this online to give you any more information, but on the clocks down here you can see they're Magneti Marelli clocks, which is what they used to fit on all the Ducatis. So I guess, you know, you could say it's got a bit of Italian flair about it. It reminds me a little bit of riding old monsters, you know, just from the riding position and how much grunt it's got. Braking's really good on this bike. I found a review on the internet saying that the brakes are lifted off the phaser, but if you look at it, they're not, because the phaser's got the blue spot calipers. So whoever came up with that, I haven't got a clue. The brakes are part Brembo, so you've got a Brembo master cylinder up here on a Yamaha caliper, and then you've got a Yamaha caliper down at the rear end. But whatever they are, they've got plenty of bite. It's quite a light bike, 175 kilos, so you don't need a huge amount of power to bring it to a stop. Suspension, the front's standard, non-adjustable, not even inverted forks, but they're adequate, they're up to the job. You've got this side shock for the rear shock down here, and that's got adjustable preload on it. Quite like where it is, to be honest. I don't really need to go adjusting that. Frame wise, it's a steel diamond frame, which feels, you know, nice and stiff, feels nice and planted on the road. Although it does have quite a short wheelbase, so it does tend to be, you know, going with the whole width of the bars kind of agility thing. You know, it does kind of help the stance of the bike. Luggage, there isn't any. Doesn't really come with much. You've got your standard little toolkit under the seat that doesn't really fit anything on the bike, which is pretty standard. Dash is really minimalist. You know, you've got your usual warning lights, neutral indicator, main beam, all that stuff. No fuel gauge. You just got speed, RPM, and 2 trip counters and an odometer. So I think what most people do, to be honest, is they use a trip counter for fuel rather than anything. Fairly frugal, being a single cylinder. Tank range, I get about 100 miles before the light comes on. But yeah, probably about 130-ish miles I'd say till you're on empty. Officially it's 145. Yeah, so 0 to 60 is 5.5 seconds. It's not really about a bike about kind of accelerating quickly and, you know, high top end speeds and stuff. It's more of a, well, I mean, it's a dirt bike engine, isn't it? So it's never going to be a super sport. So 5.5 seconds 0 to 60. Top speed around about 100, but it starts to feel quite buzzy when you go above about sort of like 50-60 mile an hour. And, you know, being such a short wheelbase at speed, it does feel a bit kind of twitchy, so I probably wouldn't want to push it that far myself. Cost wise, this one cost me £12.50 because I bought it off the company that I work for, so I got a bit of a bargain on it. And then I probably put about 800 quid in it in parts. It needed a new clutch, it needed a few other bits and pieces that I've had to put on to make it all sort of running nice. Good examples, about 2 to 3 grand. And really I'd say if you're stuck on an A2 license because of your age, this is going to be the most fun you're going to have on an A2 license, and particularly if you're on a budget as well.
Have you ever taken a pillion, and what's it like?
Yeah. Well, I'm not allowed to take passengers on this because it's insured on the fleet scheme, although I have taken a passenger on it briefly when it was insured to take passengers, and it's awful carrying a passenger. The seat's alright, where the pegs are's alright, but it's quite a nose happy bike anyway. Yeah, and seeing as the pillion seat's quite high up and quite far back, when you go whacking a weight on that, you're sort of looking at birds and trees an awful lot when you're riding. So the lights have got standard bulbs. And they're adequate, you know. I wouldn't say they're anything to write home about. It's not like the great big freight train sized headlight on my cruiser, but they'll illuminate what's in front of you. Only thing I have found with the indicators at the back is they're not the best kind of, these are standard Yamaha indicators and they tend to shake loose. When it was a training school bike, there was a bit of wood and some duct tape holding them on. Now it's mine, I've tarted it up with some lovely cable ties. Without this I find that they just vibrate and then they shake off. Okay, so stuff I like about this bike. I absolutely love the handling of it. You know, it's short, it's compact, you've got wide bars, you can absolutely throw it around in traffic and on twisties and B roads and stuff. Absolutely love the engine as well, which is also kind of, it's the best and worst parts of the bike, because I love that it's a single cylinder. You know, it's efficient, it's fuel, you know, it doesn't really, it's mechanically it's very solid because it's only one cylinder, there's not much to go wrong on there. And it gives you just so much grunt off the line. You know, it is definitely one of my favourite features of the bike, is that big thumpy single cylinder. But that's also kind of the worst part of the bike as well, because it means that it's vibrating a lot, it's really uncomfortable when you do long distances, and it runs out of puff very quickly. You know, one of the first things that you do get when you ride a big single cylinder is they run out of puff so much quicker than inline fours and V-twins and stuff that we're used to. Another thing I really like about this bike is where they've put the twin underseat exhausts. In the summer, it's a ball ache literally, because the headers run right under the seat. So in the summer you're sweating an awful lot and it's really uncomfortable. But I think they look really cool where they are, you know, pointing at the car behind you like a double-barreled shotgun in the face.